Hey Steppers, just wanted to get together with you this week on Step 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Now, I want to make one clear distinction. A lot of people make this huge mistake, and it throws a monkey wrench into what we're trying to accomplish here, which is change. And they look at their 4-step and they say, this is who I am. And that's not true. The 4-step does not describe who you are. The 4-step describes who you were. This is about change. And what we're doing is we're identifying who we used to be. We're looking at the stock and trade. We're cleaning out those million little wounds in our character. And we've put hydrogen peroxide. Now it's time to wipe up all the bacteria, all the infection that's taking place in our spiritual system. And for thousands of years, many religions, most religions, know the benefit of a good confession, a good cleansing of the soul. And that's what we're doing here in Step 5. We're admitting to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the nature of our wrongs. And the nature, the exact nature, let me tell you something. It always boils down to the same thing. When you get to the nature of the wrong, it's always fear. And fear is a lack of faith. So there was no faith. We're full of fear. This is who we were. Now we acquire faith. We're commencing in this new direction of change. And the first thing we're going to do to commit ourselves to that new direction is talk about some of the things that we had done. It doesn't define who we are, it's who we were. Okay, make that very clear. The principle is integrity, and that means we integrate. We put everything together. We realize we have a past, we recognize we're in the present, and if we change in the present, we don't repeat the same mistakes of the past. We're not condemned to relive the same mistakes we've always made. If we make changes in the present, as a matter of fact, I'll submit the following. If we make changes in the present, we change our history and we change our future simultaneously because we're looking at it from a different perspective. Listen, everybody has to go through exactly what they went through to get where they are. To get to that critical moment of overwhelming despair, in many cases, to make the changes that are necessary, because it requires a little bit of discipline, and that means pain is coming. The pain is coming, but this is a battle worth fighting for. And some people, they get so committed to the old pain, and they get so comfortable with the old pain, that the new pain is so scary, so fearful, that they would rather continue with the old pain, because at least it's familiar. At least they have mechanisms for dealing with it. But that's why they relapse. Because the mechanism for dealing with the old pain is usually to find that comfort zone in our choice of addiction. So here we're going to develop some skill, we're going to develop some discipline, we're going to develop some new behaviors, some new attitudes, some new thinking. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rid ourselves of the shame, the fear, the doubt, the despair, the uncertainty, because just getting them out of our system, admitting to those things that we had done, okay, is a huge burden relieved on our soul. And it's important to do this. It's very important to go through this process because we integrate, you know. What's the opposite of integrate is disintegrate. And that means we're not going to take a look at the past. We're not going to take a look at the present. We're not going to take a look at the future. Here we do all three of those things and we integrate. And we realize that we are dynamic people. We can change in the nanosecond. In the blink of an eye, change takes place. What makes the change permanent? It takes time. Only time will reveal if we are an imposter or if we have character. It takes time. So don't be surprised when not everybody you know is convinced that you've commenced in this new personality, this new character. You've changed. It takes time to convince people. As a matter of fact, it even takes time to convince ourselves. Because we've probably made these promises before and not kept them. A person of integrity makes a promise and keeps a promise. So here, at this juncture, we are learning about integrity. We're learning about to be true to ourselves. It was Shakespeare who said in the Midnight Soliloquy in Hamlet, one of his greatest plays, he has the actor Polonius say to his friend Hamlet, "And this above all, to thine own self be true, and it shall pass the night, the day. Thou canst not then be false to any man." So be true to ourselves. As a matter of fact, that taken from that quote is emblazoned on many medallions. It says, "To thine own self be true." So be true to yourself. It's such a liberating process, and it's a new and bright future, and it sets God up to do his work through us. And in 6 and 7, we look at our submission to God's will. We look at ourselves being submissive to an omnipotent, omnipresent, all-knowing deity who can inspire us and provide us with insight in any given time that we need it. That is an amazing access to remarkable power. But with that comes huge, even monumental responsibility. So we're commencing in this way. We're looking at ourselves in a new light. We define who we were from who we are, and we start to make some declarations and keeping our word about who we are and maintaining that integrity into the future. Remember, this is a lonely path that we tread. Not everybody is going to be on the bandwagon. This is where a lot of people get discouraged, because we feel really overwhelmed when we do step 4 and we make those lists and we rehash all of that pain, all of that damage. It's like the tornado going through the pristine city. And then in 5, we literally verbalize those stories associated with those people, identify the exact nature of our wrongs. Why we did it is always boils down to fear. Now there's pride, anger, gluttony, greed, envy, lust, and sloth. Everybody talks about the 7 deadly sins. But when you get down to the root of all of those, it's always fear. We were scared of something. And remember, courage only exists in the presence of fear. So we move forward with courage, we do that work, and in step 5, we learn that it doesn't define who we are, it's who we were. So it's a wonderful process. If you haven't gotten to this point in your recovery, then I encourage you to do the first 4 steps in order. Get acquainted with yourself, start to develop this idea of making a decision to turn our will and lives over to the care of God. We look at step 4 and we write down all of those people to whom we resent, and in step 5 we talk about it. That's what we do. That is the healing process. That is the surgical process of recovery, is we get all of that bacteria, all of that poison, all of that infection out of our spiritual system. And when we do that, at least we start with a cleaner slate to move forward and to commence to become what God has planned for us to be. Think about that. You're a child of God, and now you're going to start owning that identity and seek his insight, his inspiration from here on out. It's daunting. It's a little bit scary. It requires vigilance, but nobody ever told you that this would be easy. But it's worth it. It's well worth any effort we give it. So, I know today that the only way out is through radical change. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk about 6 and 7 next time.